Young said, you can have the cattle on the California road. And Bagley makes a lot out of that as a smoking gun kind of thing. In fact, at one time he thought that was going to make his book. But as it turns out, he also told the Utes that. He also told the Shoshone that. He was trying to get the Indians on his side in the coming Utah War. He thought it was going to be a big fight. Other than that, I don't know of any verifiable evidence at all that Brigham Young had done. The only other piece of the story that might suggest that he did is that just before the massacre happened, George A. Smith was sent on a long speech-making trip through southern Utah. We don't know a lot of this, what he said in the speeches. We know about some of what he said, but they were tough speeches about standing up to the Army and the Americans, and it was incendiary. And so there are those who think that Smith was sent down there with that kind of invective, and then when he got done with his speech, he'd pull a stake president or a few bishops aside and say, by the way, don't hesitate to kill anybody you can. But that's all speculation. I think most scholars who are honest about this, the trail doesn't lead to Brigham Young. It just doesn't, in my view, at all. Does that answer your question?
I just would recommend for anyone who's interested in the context that this all took place, read Gene's book on his biography of Jedediah Grant. It's an excellent background to all this.
Too bad it's out of print. Appreciate the plug. It's out of print.
Go find it. I certainly agree with your assessment of Bagley's book. As I read it, I found all this prodigious research, but Will just can't seem to say probable when he always says probable when it should be possible, if not definite. His biases get in the way. What would your advice be to a room full of LDS apologists when they're confronted with the argument that, okay, and this is an argument certainly Brooks made and certainly Bagley made, that whether or not Brigham Young ordered it done, he was involved in the cover-up. What's your advice to us?
Well, I don't think there's a way to apologize for that, frankly. He was. And I think if you want to apologize for it, the only thing you can do is say, well, let's figure out why he committed the cover-up, and he did. In my view, if the Civil War hadn't happened, you and I might not be here today, and the Cougars might not be playing football, because the momentum generating in Arkansas in 1860, for example, to come out here and do a full-scale investigation was getting really intense. Then the Civil War happened and the whole thing just went away. And it wasn't until the early 70s that it kicks back up again, and by that time the crime's 15 years old. And so yeah, it was a cover-up and it was done well. In fact, some people will like to point to statements Brigham Young made in the aftermath, like it had to be done. When Dudley Levitt in his diary described the tearing down of the monument, there was a cross on it that quoted the Bible, "The vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," and Brigham Young said, according to Levitt, it should read, "Vengeance is mine, and I have taken some." Bagley makes a big thing out of that as well. But that's all part, in my view, of the cover-up. He had to put forth this rhetoric that said, keep your mouth shut, this had to happen. But it's clear to me from other accounts that we have of Brigham Young in late 57, early 58 that he was furious about it. As you know, he knew how to swear and used a lot of nasty words to describe how mad he was that this had occurred. The Lee family tradition, I'm positive some of you are in the Lee family. They're everywhere. Lee family tradition is that when Lee went to tell Brigham about the event, Brigham already had some inkling that his worst fears were true, that it had been done by Mormons and not the Indians. That he was very, very angry. And then in the aftermath of that meeting with Lee, he was despondent for days. We've got solid evidence for that. Then his reaction was, in answer to your question, well, we got to keep this under lid. This could kill the church. This is going to set the church back. This could destroy it. So surely he did a Nixonian cover-up. The only thing you can do is say, was there a good reason for it? And if you are practicing Mormon, well, just save the church. I guess that's the best. Did that get you over yet?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Why did the massacre happen?
In my view, there's one word that tells you why, and the word's fear. These guys were scared. All the settlements had been pulled back. Cedar was ordered to stand. It was the last major settlement between here and California going on the southern route. There were a couple of little, Harmony and There were a few people living down in Washington, down that way. But Cedar was it. There were 600 people in all of Iron County between Parowan and Cedar City. These people were absolutely scared to death. They've been hearing for years, wind blowing over the passes, that the Californians were going to come and wipe them out. You want to have a great, you're interested in this, you want to see how blessed you are to just get the anti-Mormon stuff that's out there now. Pick up the Sacramento Bee for the 1850s. Hardly a week goes by that in that paper there isn't an editorial saying we need to raise an army and go wipe the Mormons off the face of the earth. And the folks in Cedar were scared, in my view, out of their minds that that was exactly what was going to happen. On Wednesday night, some militiamen who were coming out, the massacre happened on Friday. On Wednesday night, some militiamen were coming out. They were told when they were rounded up they were going to go out and bury some people that had been killed by the Indians. And some of them were coming out, and near Pinto Junction, they came upon three people from the party making their way back to Cedar City for help. And not knowing what's going on, they fired on these people. They killed young William Aiden, who had been a Mormon, was leaving with the party to come to California. Two of these guys, there's various accounts. Some say two got away there, one got away. Anyway, at least one got away. They killed all three of them eventually. But on Wednesday night, when the one got away, they were just convinced he made it back to the wagon circle and would tell them, this is not Indians, this is Mormons. And I don't doubt at all that that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. The decision was made the next day to kill him, and it was made out at the Meadows. And Major Higbee reported in various accounts, kill everyone who's old enough to tell the tale. And Mormons interpreted that as people at the age of accountability, so they tried to pick the kids who looked like they were under 8 to save and kill the rest. So in my view, it was just fear, just naked fear. They were just scared to death that these guys were going to go on to California, report that Mormons had attacked them, and this would bring in a mob out of California. That's my view, and the view of many other historians as well. Is that, yes, sir?
Real quick, first of all, who did they think did the lead sheet? Is that still linked to Hoffman?
Steve? Steve, you come up here. Let's see. Steve done a lot more work on that than I have, so.
First of all, sorry, I forgot to mention that at Sunstone this next week on Thursday morning, the forensic examination that was done on the scroll and the background will be presented by George Throckmorton and myself. So that's okay. First of all, does anybody not recognize the name George Throckmorton? Okay. George Throckmorton is a trained forensic document examiner. He's presently the manager of the Salt Lake City Police Crime Lab where I work. He is also one of the 2 forensic document examiners that exposed the Mark Hoffman forgeries. And he was invited by the Park Service to look at the scroll. Now, back to your question, who did it? It is a forgery, which, to get to the end, yes it is. I can give you a $100 answer or the 10-cent answer. And they're both the same. Who did it? I don't know. And like Brother Keller said, I don't know. We don't know. Part of my presentation next Thursday will be discuss the possibilities if Hoffman did it or not. After the discovery of the document last year, KSL TV and Desert News asked Jack Ford down in the state prison to ask Mark. And so Jack Ford, who's the PR man for the state prison system, who says he does this on a monthly basis where he'll go over and ask Mark, will you talk to the press? And he says no, and he comes back and says, sorry. So he, on behalf of the press, went and asked Mark, do you have anything to do with the scroll? Yes or no question. And Mark's answer was, I have nothing to say about it at this time. That's where it stands. I wrote a letter 2 weeks ago to Mark asking him the same question. It came back to me with a stamp on it. We cannot deliver without his full booking name and number. Like, no, same as the guy in prison and they don't know where he is. So, the letter went back, okay? So, come to Sunstone and we'll discuss the matter.
Linda Silito, who did the book Salamander, now works at Weber in our library, and I had a long chat with Linda and asked her what she thought